The United States announced it would pull troops from Syria. Some are calling the move a betrayal of the Kurds. But who are the Kurds? And what happens now that the U.S. is pulling its troops from the region? This is America Uncovered. I'm Chris Chappell. Has there ever been a sad and depressing subject that you still feel like you should learn about, because if you don't, you won't be as well-rounded of a person? Things like the opioid crisis come to mind. Or why Mitt Romney decided to name his secret Twitter alter ego Pierre Delecto. I suppose it could have been worse. Another example of this would be the plight of the Kurds, a Middle Eastern ethnic minority of between 20 and 35 million people who face more hardship than me asking out a girl for the first time. Thankfully, Jolene didn't even notice, so it's our little secret. Why do the Kurds face so much hardship? And it's been 15 years, why can't I forget about Jolene? The answer is Dolly Parton. Also World War I. The Kurds were nomads before World War I. After the war ended, there was talk among the world powers of giving the Kurds their own state. This was ultimately rejected. And the breakup of the Ottoman Empire after the war divided the Kurds across multiple new national borders. The Kurds are now mostly spread across 4 countries in the Middle East: Iraq, Syria, Iran, and Turkey, also known as the Sunshine States. The Kurds have been called the world's largest stateless nation. To make things more complicated, Kurds in these different regions don't all share the same language or religion, though most of them are Sunni Muslims. In 1946, some of the Kurds formed the Kurdistan Democratic Party, also known as the KDP, in an effort to attain autonomy. Over the years, the Kurds have conducted campaigns for autonomy in each of the countries they live in. Each of these campaigns was met with increasing levels of brutality and violent repression of the Kurds. The Kurds were also involved in the Iran-Iraq War in the 1980s, and let's just say, things got ugly. We're going to pause here for an America Uncovered mental health break. Here's a video of some puppies. So back to the genocide. You might be wondering, how did America get involved with the Kurds? Remember Iraqi President Saddam Hussein? In the early 1990s, the U.S.-led forces expelled Saddam's forces from Kuwait. Then President George H.W. Bush called for Iraqis to rise up and overthrow Saddam. Kurds in the region heeded the call and attempted to overthrow him. And then Saddam responded by killing thousands of Kurds. Yes, folks, in case you hadn't heard, Saddam Hussein, not the nicest guy. But the Kurds managed to negotiate for autonomy, and in 1992, parliamentary elections and presidential elections established the Kurdistan Regional Government, which became the new autonomous government for Iraqi Kurds. Fast forward through the 1990s and what was essentially a civil war between different political factions of Iraqi Kurds. Then, in 2003, the U.S. invaded Iraq a second time, and the Kurds united to become U.S. allies and help topple Saddam Hussein's regime. So, that wraps up all the fighting in the Middle East, right? Nothing else to see here. Well, if you believe that, you'll also believe that I have a bright future in the NFL. Go Yankees! Remember that the Kurds are also in Syria. Yeah, they really drew the short straw. They're between 5 and 10% of the Syrian population. That makes them the country's largest ethnic minority. In 2011 and 2012, the regime of Syrian President Bashar al-Assad was met with protests among different groups vying for control of Syria. Among these groups were militant Islamists, pro-Assad militias, and multiple Kurdish militias looking to protect their land. The strongest of the Kurdish militias was known as the People's Protection Units. In Kurdish it's pronounced like this, which is why they're just called YPG. President Obama made it clear that he opposed the Assad regime in Syria, but Obama initially held off on getting directly involved and instead chose to provide support for some of the rebels. But then ISIS started getting stronger, so Obama reversed course and joined an international coalition against ISIS. That coalition included the Kurds, multiple U.S. allies, and my grandmother. Seriously, don't mess with Nana. Backed by the United States, the Kurds, under the banner of the Syrian Democratic Forces, ultimately helped kick ISIS forces out of northern Syria while losing an estimated 11,000 troops in the process. Yet they were also able to capture and assume governance of around a quarter of Syria's land, including the part of Syria along the border with Turkey. Remember, the Kurds are also in Turkey. In fact, far-left Kurdish militants in Turkey who support an autonomous Kurdish territory have spent years launching violent attacks there. This group is known as the Kurdistan Workers' Party, or this, better known as the PKK. And if the Kurdistan Workers' Party sounds Marxist, well, it is. The PKK is considered a terrorist organization by Turkey and also by the US and the European Union. This is key. Turkey and its president, Recep Erdogan, sees Syria's Kurdish fighters as linked to the Marxist Kurdish fighters within Turkey, the PKK. This set the stage for many of the current developments. US-backed Kurdish fighters in Syria occupy land along the Turkish border. They're also holding thousands of former ISIS fighters captive. Fast forward a few years, and as President Obama left the White House, he also left the situation in Syria to President Trump. I believe this is the exact moment when Obama tagged Trump and said, "You're it." And the situation with the Kurds has gotten more complex than trying to solve the world's largest Rubik's Cube while taking the bar exam, while doing your taxes, underwater. President Trump ran on a pledge to disentangle the United States from foreign wars, so he sees this campaign promise as one of his big goals. Well, Obama also saw that as one of his goals, but don't tell Trump that. Trump first ordered the removal of the US forces from Syria in December 2018, but the plan was so unpopular within his administration that his then Secretary of Defense, Jim Mattis, resigned in protest. Then, in January 2019, Trump announced that he would begin the withdrawal of American troops from Syria. This prompted fears among the Syrian Kurds, who believed that Turkey would use the power vacuum to their advantage and slaughter them. Then, just weeks ago on October 6th, President Trump had a phone call with Turkish President Erdogan, and all hell seemed to break loose.
The decision to withdraw US forces comes after a phone conversation between US President Donald Trump and his Turkish counterpart Recep Tayyip Erdogan. Turkey has been steadily building its forces at the border, and the White House now says it will move forward with its operations soon. Over the weekend, President Erdogan told supporters forces were ready to strike in a day or two.
Turkey is both a US ally and a member of NATO, and Erdogan pressed Trump on the call to remove US forces from the Syria-Turkey border. The Trump administration issued a statement following the call that confirmed the move by the Turkish forces into Syria, saying in part, the United States Armed Forces will not support or be involved in the operation, and United States forces, having defeated the ISIS territorial caliphate, will no longer be in the immediate area. That meant Turkey had free rein to enter the territory controlled by the Kurds, and Turkish-led forces invaded on October 9th faster than mice invaded my New York City apartment. President Erdogan has outwardly supported two objectives in his assault on the Kurds. 1. Force the Kurds out of the area along the Turkish border, and 2. Send around 2 million refugees who have been displaced by Syria's civil war back to Syria. Erdogan also wants to eradicate PKK fighters in Turkey. Those are the violent Marxist ones. And Turkey also considers the Syrian Kurds linked to the PKK. In a tweet last Wednesday, President Erdogan stated, #Operation Peace Spring will neutralize terror threats against Turkey and lead to the establishment of a safe zone, facilitating the return of Syrian refugees to their homes. We will preserve Syria's territorial integrity and liberate local communities from terrorists. Yes, calling it Operation Peace Spring is the surest sign it will not be peaceful.
Mass atrocities have been committed against the Kurdish people at the hands of Turkish-backed militias.
Though media reports can be a bit confusing. Here's reporting from ABC.
This video right here appearing to show Turkey's military bombing Kurd civilians in a Syrian border town.
Horrific footage, except it was actually from a Kentucky gun range and not Syria. maybe we should be more worried about Kentucky. But in response to attacks, the real ones, not the ones in Kentucky, plus the general vulnerability the Kurds feel in the region, they've aligned themselves with their former nemesis, Syrian President Bashar al-Assad. Yes, the Middle East is a complicated place. President Assad responded to the Turkish assault by saying, "We will respond to it and confront it, in all its forms, anywhere in Syria, using all legitimate means at our disposal." The commander-in-chief of the Kurdish forces in Syria acknowledged the about-face by the Kurds, saying in an op-ed in Foreign Policy magazine, "We believe in democracy as a core concept, but in light of the invasion by Turkey and the existential threat its attack poses for our people, we may have to reconsider our alliances." The partnership with Assad makes this even more complex than my burgeoning NFL career. That's because Assad is backed by both the Russians and the Iranians. They're both geopolitical opponents of the United States. They both also supported Assad during the Syrian civil war, and they're vying for greater control in the region. And if all of this wasn't bad enough, there's also the group that has caused enormous outrage, mayhem, and carnage around the world. The Jonas Brothers. And also ISIS. The Syrian Kurds were reportedly guarding more than 12,000 ISIS combatants in jails in the area bordering Turkey. At least some prisoners have escaped after the Turkish shelling. The big concern is that some prisoners are believed to be highly dangerous foreign fighters from Europe and other parts of the globe. President Trump seems unconcerned about the escape of these ISIS fighters, saying that they would likely just escape back to Europe since European countries had rejected America's earlier offers to take them as prisoners.
These ISIS fighters escape and pose a threat elsewhere.
Well, they're going to be escaping to Europe. That's where they want to go. They want to go back to their homes, but Europe didn't want them from us. We could have given it to them. They could have had trials. They could have done whatever they wanted. But as usual, it's not reciprocal. You know my favorite word, reciprocal. That's all I want. I don't want an edge. I just want reciprocal. And it's not reciprocal, Steve. It's not a fair deal for the United States.
But then, apparently feeling heat for his decision to withdraw U.S. troops, President Trump also threatened to levy sanctions against Turkey if they commit violence against the Kurds. Trump composed an extraordinary letter to President Erdogan saying, in part, "I don't want to be responsible for destroying the Turkish economy, and I will. History will look upon you favorably if you get this done the right and humane way. It will look upon you forever as the devil if good things don't happen. Don't be a tough guy. Don't be a fool. I'll call you later." Coincidentally, that's almost the exact language I used to ask a girl out for the first time. I mean, besides the part about destroying the Turkish economy. Sorry, Jolene. Turkish President Erdogan did not appear fazed by Trump's letter. He received the letter, thoroughly rejected it, and put it in the bin. Yeah, I know what it's like to have your letters rejected. But all is not lost. Based on my experience, Trump should take the next step and stand outside Erdogan's window holding up a boombox. But Trump did the next best thing. He held up Mike Pence. In the days following the release of the letter, Vice President Mike Pence led a delegation to Turkey to meet with representatives of the Turkish government. The two sides hammered out a ceasefire deal in an attempt to halt the killing in northeast Syria and allow Kurdish troops to withdraw. But Kurdish troops are skeptical of the agreement. They see it as caving to the Turkish government in the removal of Kurds from the Syrian-Turkish border area. As Kurdish political leader Salem Muslim told local television, "Our people did not want this war. We welcome the ceasefire, but we will defend ourselves in the event of any attack. Ceasefire is one thing, and surrender is another thing, and we are ready to defend ourselves. We will not accept the occupation of northern Syria." There are already signs that the ceasefire is not effective. Syrian Kurds accused the Turks of violating the ceasefire the day that it went into effect. For their part, members of U.S. Congress from both parties have condemned the Trump administration for abandoning the Kurds. And President Trump was all like, "Yeah, but that's not our problem, and the Kurds are not angels." And as I said, Trump is trying to fulfill his campaign promise of getting U.S. troops out of the Middle East. But it always seems that the reality is a bit more complicated, especially in the Middle East. So what do you think about America's decision to withdraw its troops from the Syria-Turkey border? Leave your comments below. And remember, America Uncovered is supported mainly by viewers, so visit patreon.com/AmericaUncovered. Contribute $1 or more per episode. We rely on your support to help us keep making great episodes. Once again, I'm Chris Chappell. Thanks for watching America Uncovered.